Hey guys, it's me, John Avenger, once again, and welcome back to Rotten Tomatoes Month. And this time we got the sequel, the only sequel that got made that was in theaters of the Kickboxer movies. This is Kickboxer 2. It has a subtitle, I forgot. I think it's Never Look Back or something like that. But anyway, it's a decent sequel to the first one. It's not as good. It got a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes compared to the first one. And there's a big reason why Van Damme's not in this one. But to me, there's three things they should have done in this movie. Let it stand on its own without mentioning Van Damme's character. Do it, second, do it in a completely different environment, which they kind of do. But like I said, and also change the ending fight because it's basically the same. It's basically the first movie's fight, but with a different character. Those are my main problems with the movie. The rest of the film is pretty decent. I think Sasha Mitchell as a lead, he's fine for what he has to do. He's not as good as Van Damme, but he's serviceable. He's a lot more passable than some actors I've seen in this decade. I can easily say that. David Chan comes back as as Mr. Chow. Um, and of course, the guy that plays Tong Po comes back, not for no reason except for fan service. Because in this one, he kills somebody in the ring. He kills a guy named Brian, who is Sasha Mitchell's friend that was taking steroids and going to the wrong people for advice. And then he fights Tong Po out of nowhere, and he gets his ass kicked, and then he dies. So in this one, it's revenge again, which is kind of like in the first one. But the rest of the story is not a remake of the first one because Sasha Mitchell is a teacher at a gym, so that's different from this guy in the first one, Kurt Sloan. And basically, a bunch of thugs burn down his gym, and a little kid dies. So this movie has some balls. It kills a kid off screen. Granted, you don't see him burning alive, and but they said that's basically what happens, and he gets beat up, and he's in the hospital, just like whatchamacallit, Kurt Sloan's brother in the first movie. But yeah, there's some similarities. It's not in a completely original movie, but like I said, just don't mention Van Damme in this movie because there's a scene literally 13 minutes into the movie. You could have cut that out. There's a scene he's talking to this guy, and they mention something what happened to Kurt, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't need that. You could have cut that easily out. It's something that doesn't it hurts the film. It only hurts the first movie because of what they do. And like I said, you don't need to make a sequel and kill off characters. Just say that they did something else. They tried that with Jaws 4, and I didn't buy it. They did that in The Force Awakens. I didn't like that either. They did that in Alien 3 and all these other movies. Yeah, don't make a sequel and then make it downbeat from the beginning. I'm fine with the story where, they burned down his gym, they killed a kid, and then they killed his friend Brian, so he wants revenge. And I get it. And the fighting is just as decent as the first one. It's a different director. It's Albert Puin, I think, or Puin, Albert Puin. Yeah, he did the '90s Captain America movie, which is awful, but I can watch it. I think he did Cyborg, or was it Nemesis? He did one of those. I think it was Nemesis. Yeah, he's done a lot of low budget B grade action films in the '90s. He's not a terrible director. I've seen a lot worse, and I'd rather see this one than Kickboxer Vengeance, where Van Damme's in the movie, but he's not even Sloan. He's just another character, and I'm like, well, that's a wasted opportunity. It's more like a remake of the first one. But this film on its own, there's some things I like in it. They said it's humorless, but no, I chuckled a couple of times. Uh, it's not as violent as the first movie. I mean, the fights are, but that's about it. There's no like decapitations or anything, and it's not like in the first movie where the training was even more intense in the first movie. Here, it's very brief and it goes by quick. The soundtrack is not as good either compared to the first one. It's trying to have the soundtrack of the first one, but it's a '90s film, so it has to have a '90s soundtrack. It's there. It's not horrible, but the film it's a decent watch. If you see this once, it's fine. I saw this is the second time I've watched it in years, and it's it's passable. It's not like the worst sequel I've ever seen. Believe me, I have seen way worse than this. Son of the Mask. That's a sequel that not only hurts the first one, but it's an even worse version of the first one, and had horrible CGI. At least here, there's no horrible CGI. And the rest of the cast, you got Heather McComb. She's in the movie. She's like a teenager in this movie. You have Hiroyuki Tagawa. He was from Mortal Kombat and The Phantom and a bunch of other stuff. Tekken. You have Peter Boyle. May rest in peace. He's one of the managers, I think, of the that's going up against Sloan in this movie. And there's some other people, and of course, I said David Chan and Mitchell Quisi come back as their respective characters. The thing is, I felt like Tom Poe was kind of forced in this movie because I'm like, oh, we got him back, so we have to shoehorn into him saying that he killed a bunch of people in Thailand and he's coming back, and in an unsanctioned fight. That he's unsanctioned to fight against Brian, and he kills him, and he just goes crazy, throwing the referees and everything. But I'm glad that they did something different. It takes place in Los Angeles. It's not in Thailand again. That would have been just the same movie as like Hangover 2, where they pretty much do the same thing again, but in a new location. Here, I can take it. It's not Taken 2 where the action scenes you can't see them because they're doing this, and the bad edits and everything just ruins it. And it's basically the first movie again, just weaker and not as badass and just boring. Here, it's a serviceable movie. If you watch it, I didn't watch this until later because I actually watched 3 and 4 before this, and before the first two, so I like those a lot more than this one, only because they're their own movies and they don't mention Van Damme's character or his brother that got paralyzed, or Miley, or they don't mention them, which is fine. Sometimes in a sequel, you got to go forward. You don't want to dwell in the past and then make it hurt your feature film. So yeah, it's a decent film. It has its problems, definitely, but I can watch it again. I mean, I wish that it just did its own thing in the first like half of it. But yeah, you don't mention Van Damme's character from the first one, it can stand on its own. Kind of like Halloween Resurrection. If you skip the first 15 minutes, the rest of the movie is passable. It's not the greatest thing ever. It's not the worst thing ever. But I'd rather see that than like the remake of Halloween, or in this case like the remake of Karate Kid, or Kickboxer Vengeance, which is basically a remake of the first one because it's the same thing. You have Tom Poe, you got Sloan, and then you have an old trainer. Instead of an Asian guy, this time it's Van Damme, and because he's older. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. I'd rather see all the Kickboxer sequels, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Which 5 is a standalone. So that's the only Kickboxer movie that doesn't have Van Damme, Sasha Mitchell, and it's its own thing. It's a standalone sequel in name only. But I liked it too because it has a badass lead, Mark Dacascos, the only Asian man to lead this franchise. So yeah, it's a decent movie. Like if you've never seen the first one and you see this one, well, I would advise watching the first one first, then see this one, and then 3 and 4 they're watchable as well. They're not horrible. Like the low rating it got on IMDb, I've seen worse, guys. Trust me. Son of the Mask is in one of the worst movies list on IMDb for a reason, and so is like Troll 2 and Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2. Those are atrocious compared to this. This is at least a watchable action movie from the 90s. And Van Damme didn't come back because he was doing Lionheart, which is an awesome freaking movie. It's way better than this. So yeah, it's passable. It's not horrible. Hold on, I might be sneezing. Um, anyway, that's my review of Kickboxer 2. If you want to see it, it's they have it in a lot of places online, and you can get it on DVD and VHS and whatever. And it's not horrible. I've seen way worse. That's the thing. There's meh kind of decent time wasters, and then there's movies that hurt you. And yeah, I decided to do this video without a hat because, to distinguish myself. And it's cooler out today. It wasn't hot like last week. But anyway, guys, that's my review of Kickboxer 2. I hope I did a good job because I can't review 3 and 4 because they don't have a Rotten Tomatoes score. So they're out. And yeah, and I'll review them eventually. So I got to just watch them again. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. And I'll see you in the next review.